Hi, I'm Joan, and I'd love to share some information about planting in the ground. Now, a lot of times people say, I don't like to do that because, of course, it's just too much work to maintain. And I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I use to make this basically effortless. And a lot of it has to do with making sure that the bed is properly prepared always and plant selection. So first of all, what I always do is I make sure that I mulch my garden. And it's always very important to use, in this case I'm just using some wood-based mulch. And why do I do this? Because it suppresses the weeds when the plants are young, and therefore it makes my life so much easier. So in the early spring, I planted this bed the first week of May here in West Chicago, Illinois. The way I begin always is just to simply rake the mulch off that has not decomposed or disappeared over the winter. And I'll pick the few weeds that may be on the edges, etc. And I'll take my shovel and I'll turn the bed over and just fluff all the soil up, rake it smooth, and just make a very nice presentation and get it ready for planting. Then to the garden center. I will make sure that I pick plants that I really love, that are pollinator friendly. And of course, here's my little friend, the bumblebee, doing his job. And in this year, I used the Salvia Victoria Blue. I really liked it because, again, pollinator friendly. It makes a great complement to the other salvias that I've used in my containers leading up to the driveway. This is truly a bedding plant variety. I think I planted them roughly around 6 to 8 inches apart, nice and tight, and it just fills in gorgeously. We have had some heavy rains last night and no damage whatsoever to the Salvia Victoria Blue, or for that matter, any of the other plants that are in my garden. So I just love it again. Long-lasting flowers and fantastic for pollinators, fantastic for hummingbirds. So with that blue presentation, I wanted something a little brighter. So of course, the marigolds. That is the Durango yellow. I love using marigolds as my border. It's so bright, it's so vibrant, and they're just so reliable. And when I was young and starting off in horticulture, I would use marigolds all the time as a plant that really did not like to be eaten by bunnies or deer. And this is so funny because every year when I plant my marigolds, when the plants are young, my bunny comes and nips the flowers, the first flowers off my plants, which is always somewhat frustrating, but it does a really neat trick. It just makes the plants put more emphasis on growing with branching and leaves and foliage, and it just enables me to have just so much of a greater presentation. So I know that sounds weird, but my bunny loves to eat my marigolds when they're young, and then they never eat them after that. So it's really very interesting phenomenon. So blue, yellow, and a perfect complement to that is red. Now I have discovered a geranium that I absolutely love. This is the Dynamo dark red. Look at that. That is one plant. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or a dozen or so full umbels. Great presentation. Love blue, yellow, and red together. It's very bright from any of the neighbors driving by through the neighborhood to enjoy. And again, if you remember what I said a few minutes ago, we had some serious heavy rains yesterday and some very high heat and very high humidity for weeks leading up to today, and no yellowing of the foliage, no disease pressure, and these flowers have really held well through the extremities of the weather that we've experienced here this summer. Now, we have some volunteers in our garden, and I just welcome them. This particular plant just happens to be a volunteer of some celosia that I had planted in this bed a few years back. And they set seed, and occasionally you'll see little volunteer plants springing up through the garden. And I am just watching and waiting to see what colors they may be. It's kind of a fun thing to do. If I did not like the way the plants are progressing, I could simply remove them and treat them as a weed. But in this case, I'm going to allow that celosia to surprise me, and let's just see what happens. And so that's the fun part about gardening, is just to discover and see what happens. Now, when I planted these plants, after I planted them, getting back to how I mulched, when they were young, I carefully spread a nice base of mulch, maybe a few inches thick, around each individual plant. This allowed the Salvia and the Marigolds and the Geraniums to grow up and be nice and thick presentation. Therefore, the weeds did not have any opportunity to come up. So, in all reality, I have weeded this bed only when I was doing the bed prep to prepare for planting, and after that, I've really done nothing more than water and fertilize as needed, and I've been able to get this fantastic presentation. I hope that this helps you, and happy gardening.